Hey everyone, thanks to IGDA for letting me come out and talk to you tonight. My name is Paul Simon, and I'm going to be talking to you tonight about a recent release of our new engine on Android. A little quick overview of what I'm going to talk about. I'll introduce myself and our company, One Thumb Mobile, as well as Celtic Heroes. Talk to you about the Android project and putting out the new engine, what worked well for us, some of the challenges that we faced, and a little bit about the future of where we're going next with the project. And open up. Yeah. Stop doing that. So, as I said, my name is Paul Simon. I've been developing MMOs for over 9 years now. Been a developer on 8 different MMOs. I really love creating MMOs and working in virtual worlds. I end up having to read a little bit too much off the slides tonight, or end up with an epic fail. Chalk that one up to a little too much Elder Scrolls Online. A little bit about One Thumb Mobile. So One Thumb Mobile is an independent games development studio here in Glasgow. We were founded back in 2006, and the team has more than 15 years of experience developing mobile games. We've been working with our own IPs recently, but we've also worked with some big names such as Liverpool Football Club, Star Trek, and Fast and the Furious. We've got a growing, passionate team. When I first joined the studio about 2 years ago, we were 9 people. Just last week, we ended up growing to over 25. We've got people from all over the world, people who worked at companies like Blizzard, Wizards of the Coast, Rare, Jagex, Turbine, BigPoint, to name a few. And since 2011, our team's been entirely devoted to developing Celtic Heroes, which is our flagship 3D mobile MMO. As I said, Celtic Heroes is a 3D, free-to-play mobile MMO. It's available exclusively on mobile devices. Features full 3D graphics, player-driven, persistent world, customizable skills and attribute system, and a unique world that's based on Celtic mythology. A little bit about the history of the project. So, Celtic Heroes was originally launched back in June of 2011. The game was really small when we first put it out. It was 4 zones and only had about 40 levels in it. Over the past 3 years, we put out a lot of new content for the game. So we've added up to 11 zones now. We've got about 50 different monster types, over 200 levels of gameplay, hundreds of quests, thousands of items to collect. So the game's just really grown and taken off massively. A little bit about sort of where we want it to go and why we want to do the project. So in early 2012, the team made the decision to put the game out onto Android using a new third-party engine. And there's a number of reasons that we wanted to do that. One of them you can see here. Nice picture of some of our, at the time, endgame players fighting their pants. The game had a lot of impressive technology behind it, but as you can see, a lot of feedback we got was that the game kind of EverQuesty, which obviously didn't represent sort of all the passion sort of tech that we put into it. So one of the big things was we wanted to improve the graphics. Another thing that we wanted to do was get a better pipeline. So with the current engine development, how it was going, the team was spending quite a bit of time putting all of our effort into working on the engine. As everyone's aware of the speed of mobile technology and how quickly it's developing, that meant that we were spending way too much time working on the engine and not enough time working on game features. So we wanted to get better pipeline in place so that we could spend more of our time focusing on game features rather than trying to keep up with the graphics of the mobile market. Cross-platform support was also really big for us. When we first launched, we only launched on iOS, but we knew that we wanted to move into the Android space. Being able to do that, with the team that we had, which was less than 10 people, wasn't really going to happen if we wanted to be able to put any new game features in. So cross-platform support that would come natively with using a third-party engine was a really big deal. And kind of tying all that together is future-proofing it for us. So being able to make sure that we've got an engine that's going to grow alongside of us, and that obviously we're going to have to be working with it, but something that the team isn't going to have to necessarily invest as much into the sort of core engine technology. So talking a little bit about the project itself and how it went. When I joined the studio in October of 2012, the project had been ongoing for a bit of time at that point. For the majority of the project, we had 2 programmers who had done most of the work. This was obviously quite tricky because at the same time we also had the existing player base to support. So as well as porting the entire game over to a new engine, they also were putting out a major expansion which had 80 new levels, 3 new zones, 15 new monster types, number of new quests, new raid armor set, a lot of stuff to put out. In addition to the expansion, we also had 5 seasonal events and more small bug fixes and fixing for exploits and other patches than I really care to remember. But by late 2013, the team had got most of the big heavy lifting done. So the majority of the content had been ported over. The majority of the game was up and running in Android, but we still didn't have a release date sort of set in stone. So it was kind of towards the end of 2013 that the team had a big push and we said, okay, we got something that we're happy with, that we know runs in the game, but we really need to get this thing out the door and really make a difference. So December 2013 and into January 2014, we set ourselves a goal of, okay, let's get something out by the end of January. Didn't happen, unfortunately, but what it did do was sort of open up the doors for us to realize, okay, this is what's still missing. We pushed really hard, we didn't make it, but we got ourselves organized, dusted ourselves off, and released the new engine onto Android in early April of this year. So a little bit about what worked for us. As you can see here, the bottom image here is the new graphics, and the top bit is the exact same spot in the old engine. So we were able to hit our goal of massively improving the graphics. The art team did an amazing job. They completely overhauled every single animation in the game, breathed a whole lot of new life. We've got sort of idle animations and some really flashy stuff. Graphics look way, way better. We've got dynamic lighting, completely new starting outfits. So just exactly what we wanted to hit with that. Something that we're really proud of going out and talking to the media about and getting people excited about. Overhauling the game funnel was another big one for us. If anyone's played Celtic Heroes on the iOS version, we've got a fairly clunky, old school style MMO login. So you download the game, then you've got to create an account. After you create an account, you then have to go back to the main menu, put in your account details, and then go through a fairly complex character creation process for the platform. When it's all said and done on our iOS engine, only about 74% of the people who download the game will ever get in and start playing the first quest. So there's obviously a big gap there that we realized wasn't really acceptable for us and we wanted to fill. So with the new engine, what we did is we sat down and we sort of said, okay, well, what we've got currently works really well for a traditional desktop-based MMO, but what works for mobile? So what we tried to do is get rid of as much friction as we could. So we took away the account sign-up process and we automatically created an account for the players in the background. Then once they hit level 5 in the game, we asked the players to register their account. Rather than having to force the player to put in any details, we said, okay, big thing that we want to make sure is that the player's not to do anything other than hit a button to get into the game. So our initial goal was to say, okay, it's going to be a one-button touch to get into Celtic Heroes. We didn't end up hitting that. We ended up with 2-button touches. So the first button, that you touch the screen, will get you into, give you an automatically generated character with random class, gender, appearance. The player can then just go and hit enter game and log right in, or they can go and customize their character. So we still wanted to give the players the deep MMO customization that they're used to, but we obviously wanted to recognize what people want to do on the platform. And I just pulled up numbers on that last night, and 93.5% of people now who download the game get in and start the first quest. So a big improvement for us. We're really, really happy about that. Improved development pipeline. So this was a big one for us. The team had kind of had a historical problem with getting content out quickly. So before we started the project, more than 50% of our art assets were outsourced. And sometimes things, even when they came back from outsourcing, it was going to be another 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Sometimes, in some cases, it was months before that content actually hit the game. So we use that as one of our sort of core features for the game. We wanted to make sure that, once we launched this, that we didn't have those same issues. We've done a great job with that. Since January, all of our art we brought in-house, which is a really big achievement for the studio. We're recently working on a summer event, which previously probably would have taken us about, not doing that. Previously probably would have taken us about 6 weeks to be able to get all the art and all the assets, even with outsourcing. We were able to get all the work done in a little over 4 weeks and not having to outsource any of it. So that was a really big deal for us. Last, but definitely not least, of the really good things that work well for us was utilizing our existing server technology. So when Celtic Heroes first launched, there was obviously a lot of pain and heartache, as you can expect with launching your own mobile MMO. So on the server side of things, we had server downtime, we had bugs, crashes, servers running out of memory. Lots of problems that over the past 3 years we worked really, really hard to sort of smooth out. And nowadays, maybe once every 6 months we have a weird crash or something like that that we have to deal with, but we're really happy with how stable our technology is now in the back end. So we really want to make sure that we didn't have to go through that whole process over again when we put out the new engine. And we had to make some slight changes to the back end, but for the most part, we're able to use our existing back end as is, which has de-risked a lot of the new engine for us. So challenges. Obviously, any project is going to have challenges. Ours is no different. It's such a big project. The biggest thing that hit was that we were more than 8 months behind where we wanted to be. I say where we wanted to be rather than where we were scheduled to go, because when the project was initially launched, we didn't have a scheduled date. We just kind of said, wow, this is going to take us a long time. We've got to get cracking on with it. So as a team does, when you've got a small programming team and a massive amount of work, you just kind of start chunking away at it and hope for the best. This worked well for most of the project, but obviously once you're a year into it and you're still going, how long is it going to take for us to wrap this up? And you can't give yourselves a good answer. You know that you've probably lost track of things. And when we made that big push at towards the end of January, it uncovered a lot of things where we said, oh crap, we completely forgot about this, or whoops, we didn't realize we were going to have to work on that. So the lack of project management up front kind of hurt us towards the end of the project, especially when we were trying to make that big push. Unity challenges. So we went with Unity 3D for our new front-end technology, which has been really great. As I said, we're able to quite easily do cross-platform builds. Gets us a lot of shiny things like dynamic shadows and better shading and all that sort of stuff. But Unity's not without its downsides when working in a large team. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with working with Unity in large teams, but if you use external version control, Unity has this concept of metafiles. Metafile is just a small text file that sort of keeps track of every individual asset and tells version control what state it's in. These work really well when people check them in properly, but as things always happen, if something goes wrong or the file doesn't get checked in, when that asset gets pushed out to everyone else's build, everyone's going to generate their own metafile, including the build machine. So if you've got a build machine, it's doing automatic builds for you, and it thinks that the file's on the first iteration, and you've got artists or designers or programmers working on things, and they're putting out multiple builds. They're kind of wondering, like, hey, what's going on here, guys? Like, I'm sure we should be updating. And then about 2 weeks later, you go on the build machine, and you're like, that's a couple hundred metafiles that haven't been checked in. And then you revert that, and then you've got a whole mess of problems on your hands. So it could be anything from a broken build that you don't know about to just things being a bit wackier, or people wasting a lot of time iterating over assets. Scene files, as well, if anyone's familiar with Unity. The way that you save a level in Unity is with a scene file. So all of our zones are saved out of scene files. And in our own bespoke technology, we're able to break down our levels a bit more elegantly than Unity does it. So in our old custom engine, we're able to separate out the terrain from the collisions, from light maps, and all the little bits. So if a programmer needs to go in and change an AI map, they're able to make that tweak. If an artist wants to change lighting, then they can make that. Unfortunately, with Unity, straight out of the box as we've been using it, we don't have that ability yet. Something that we kind of want to look at, see if we're able to break apart some of those things, because at the moment, if we want to make any change to one of our levels, even if it's a small, tiny collision change, that means the entire zone's got to get recommitted, which means the QA team is going to have to go over that all over again. And probably the biggest thing is game performance. So with our own bespoke technology, we've had the last 3-4 years to really iterate over our engine. We're able to really refine that and keep memory really, really low, to the point where we're still able to run on the iPhone 2 when Apple sort of stopped even allowing us. They got past the point of not supporting it to the point of saying, yeah, we're not going to let you guys do builds to this anymore. But we were still able to do builds to that, which is kind of a shame, because obviously you want to be supportive of as wide of a player base as possible. But with the new engine, we don't have as much control. And unfortunately, the game's running probably about 3 times heavier now than with our own bespoke engine, and is kind of past that danger threshold of running over 100 meg in memory. So when you're doing that, and you're trying to run on a phone with 512 memory, and a user has Facebook open, and they've got Candy Crush and Clash of Clans, they're kind of wondering, oh, hey, why is the game crashing on me? It's like, well, maybe you need to shut down your stuff. But Android doesn't allow you to do that. So you've got a system where you kind of have to rely on the users to say, oh, this is a really big game, I should shut down everything else. So kind of when the players come to us and say, hey, I'm crashing, the first port of call is always saying, hey, have you made sure that everything else is shut down on your device before playing the game? And the last big one is Android phones. So on Apple, we've got support 15 devices across iPads, iPhones, and iPods, which isn't too bad. Able to do that quite easily. With Android, as of yesterday, we have 5,158 devices that Android has said can support Celtic Heroes. Besides making the QA team really, really sad, that number obviously is not something that you're going to be able to support every single device. So we're able to, how we're going to tackle that problem. So you've got 5,000 devices that supposedly can support your phone. You've got everything from really nice Samsung 5 all the way down to Nexus 1 that still's got trackball in it. What we've had to do is kind of take a wider look at the market and say, okay, how are we going to break this down? So what we decided to do was break the users down by memory. So anyone who's got 512 memory is going to be getting our low-end devices. Anyone between 512 and a gig gets medium end, and anyone over a gig gets high end. And we've also kind of taken some flagship phones. So the Samsung phones run the game really well, and they're also some of the biggest phones in the market. So some phone that's got 5% of your market, we're willing to go in there and do a custom build for that and make sure that it's looking as good as possible on those phones. So that was how we've tackled that so far. But obviously, it's going to be an ongoing challenge for us. One that we knew was out there, and that was one of the reasons why we wanted to go to a third-party engine, but kind of a daunting task when you're looking at it. So the future, what are we going to do going forwards? We've still got quite a bit of content that we need to be putting out. So we've launched the first 5 zones initially in April. Every 2 weeks since, we released another zone or 2. So we've got 3 zones left until the Android is caught back up with iOS. That's going to probably be finished up in about a month or so. In between that, we've got a summer event that we want to launch. Originally, the plan was that our winter event was going to be the last one that we put out on both on the iOS platform using the old engine. Unfortunately, obviously due to the fact that we had such long delays and having some angsty players, we decided to change that and make sure that we're supporting our old players as well as the new. And then once we've got that, the next big challenge for us is making sure that iOS is going to get the best possible experience when they update. Because regardless of all the blood, sweat, and tears that we put in and how much we can look past the flaws, our existing player base is going to update the game and go, shit, you've got some problems here. So what we want to do is make sure we can avoid that, so that when the existing users update the game, they get the best experience possible, and that they all see it as, oh, great, we're really happy with what you guys have been doing over the last 2 years, and they don't feel like it's been a waste of time. Faster development. So as I said, we had a lot of learnings that we took away from having such long delays on getting the new engine port out. So what we've been doing to try and counteract that is to get a roadmap for the development. So what we've done is started planning out all of our releases as far in advance as we can. So we've got about 12 months now worth of development that's spec'd out in sort of bullet point form. And I've been working through, along with the rest of the team, to sort of start planning that out so that rather than coming in at the last minute and the designers or programmers or whoever says, okay, I'm ready to jump on to the next project, rather than having to say, oh crap, let's jump on that and design it right away, we've already got something in place and people can just kind of pick things off the shelf. That's been really effective for us already. The programming teams picked up a lot of things that normally they would have probably just gone, oh, hey, what can we work on? And they would have looked around and maybe done a little pet project, or they would have gone and done some improvements onto the game. We're actually able to get some new features in that we've been looking for a really long time. One of the really great ones that we got in recently was asking the players to rate the game once they played it and they were engaged. This worked really, really well for us. So prior to release, we had a lot of really great reviews. All of our really engaged players jumped on and gave us great reviews. We're up to, I think, 4.4 or so, which is really good. We were really happy with that. But then slowly started to slide downhill as some of those players, as said, with the low-end devices, were having issues, were giving us feedback about how they couldn't play the game. So we did as much as we could in the Google Play Store to go in and try and talk to them directly and say, here's what you can do to solve the problem. We're really working hard on trying to fix this. But the biggest thing that's had an impact on that has been putting in this rate us system. So after the players get to level 5, we then trigger Signpost, which is one of the systems that we have that sort of pushes messages to the players. So the next time that they log in after they've hit level 5, it then asks them to go to the store and rate us. I think we had about 300 or 400 ratings within the first day after doing that, and I think about 80% of them were 5 stars. So we were really able to find those players who were really having a good time and maybe didn't want to go to the Play Store or didn't think about going to the Play Store to rate us. That was a really big win for us. It's jumped our rating back up from, I think, 4.15 to 4.21 or so now. So we're starting to gain back some of that traction that we had lost. A big marketing push. That's going to be one of the big things once we get the engine back onto both Android and iOS. So we're going to be shouting about the new graphics and how great everything looks, trying to do some user acquisition, and then more regular content and better communication with our players. More regular content, as we said, we're working on a development roadmap. Some of the big things that we want to do this year, we want to do a mounted combat system. We're going to introduce crafting professions, and a new endgame raid zone. Those are the 3 sort of really big things that we want to do this year, along with about 100 or so other small things that we've got on schedule. And just making sure that we're communicating with our players, because previously when we didn't have those deadlines, we didn't have the dates, we were really hesitant to tell the players about it, because obviously not knowing when it was going to come out. It's a recipe for grumpy players to tell them about this really cool feature that they're not going to get. So now that we actually are getting better with dates and timing, we're able to talk more with our players. So thank you everyone for letting me talk, and if everyone's got any questions, I'll take that now. Yeah?
In terms of working between iOS and Android, you say that at the moment they are still running on different platforms,
yeah.
Unity and Android, and then you're still running your old system on iOS. Are these players playing on the same servers, or are they completely separate?
They're playing on different servers at the moment. So we had to split our database. So there was enough database changes that we weren't able to use the exact same database with the new engine and the old one. It's been one of the biggest things that players have been asking for, actually. So as soon as we released the new engine, the player said, can I use my existing account to log in on Android to the old servers? And at the moment, they can't. We'll probably always keep the databases separate because just in terms of like making sure that we're able to keep track of our Android payments in a single database and our Apple payments in a single database. But cross-platform play, so the players being able to connect to the servers, being able to connect to the Apple servers from an Android device and vice versa, that's probably something that we're going to be looking at next year because the players have really been asking for
how did you acquire the players if you don't have a publisher?
On Apple, it was luck, I think. I wasn't at the studio when we launched on iOS for the first time, but we had more players than we could handle. We had thousands and thousands of players on the first day, and the servers didn't work that well. I think it took the team about a month or so really to get the game to that sort of stable point. We've got pretty good organic downloads at the moment, maybe about half of what we got on Apple. But at the moment, it's all word of mouth and keywords. So one of the really great things is because we're an MMO and because we're 3D and quite unique, we're number 2 currently for search for MMO. Search for MMORPG, I think we're number 15, 16. If you look for 3D MMO, we're number 1. So we're guessing that it's organic search terms and things like that because you know, when the players are searching for MMO, but we're not really sure exactly how the players are finding it. To date, we've not done any user acquisition other than really small tests, so it's not coming from acquiring users yet, but that's something that we're hoping to get.
So you haven't been featured on any review site or?
When we launched on Android, we did send out a press release and got the word out, and we did get featured on a few review sites and things like that. It definitely had an impact because we saw, oddly, quite a few players from Russia and Poland. So we were picked up by a few Russian sites and a Polish site, and that was reflected in the downloads. And it was kind of odd because traditionally our market's been about 70% US, so you're expecting roughly the same numbers when we launched on Android. But it didn't work out that way. So we've actually had on Android a bigger pull from Europe on most days than we do in the United States.
I have a few more questions.
Yeah.
How many of the players are actually paying?
On iOS, it fluctuates depending on seasonal stuff, but it generally is around 2% or so.
So how do you make money? Because that's the usual amount, 1 to 2%. So what's the lifetime value of a player?
I don't know offhand. But
you have a lot of employees.
So we've got quite a high lifetime value for our players. I don't know what it is offhand, but that's going to be because we've got really engaged players at the top end. So we've got a really deep game, one that's got hundreds, thousands of hours of gameplay. I think the top player that's played the most has played 300 days in game since we've launched. Some of that's going to be from botting, and not botting, but there's anti-AFK that players used to do, where they would just kind of leave their characters running overnight. So probably down to that, but we've got what we think is a rather unique and innovative model for in-app purchases. So the majority of everything that we've got in our item shop is tradable. So players will buy, they'll buy an XP elixir, or they'll buy gold or anything like that, and they're going to be able to trade that with other players. This creates a value for them, so they're not just investing in that one particular character. They're kind of investing in the economy, and they're able to trade that around to other players. So it's kind of the TF2 approach, where things can come into the system, and then players are able to trade it around. But as long as someone brings it in, we don't really care if a player invests their time and gets gold, or if they're going to get it from other ones. So is that?
Yeah, it's a. How many players?
So, you're saying that you're looking to keep the Android and the iOS players on the separate databases.
Yeah.
Have you got any sort of system in place for I want to get my Samsung phone and get an iPhone?
So we don't at the moment, but it's one of the things that the players have been, once again, one of the things that they've been asking for is like, oh, I want to transfer my character over to Android. It's not something that we're supporting at the moment, but it is something that players have brought up, so we've added it to the roadmap. But it's got to sort of fight itself against 100 other things on there. So at the moment, we're still kind of working through polish, bug fixes, user flow, that sort of stuff. once we get the iOS release out, then we're probably going to look at doing cross-server and server transfers, name changes, a lot of things like that players have been asking for.
Yeah, I just think you spent years building up the character on code.
Yeah.
The thought of losing that.
Yeah, so it's definitely something that the players are asking about. We've thought about doing it sort of manually, but the problem is we have to take the servers down if we want to transfer the characters over safely. Obviously, the cost of doing that is really high, so we've not done manual transfers yet. Yeah.
How do you find targeting like MMO style content at mobile users compared to desktop? I mean, obviously it sounds like people play it for a long time, but I would have thought like sitting down on a mobile device and playing for tons of hours is not as likely as on desktop. So like, have you experienced?
So we've tried to take the MMO gameplay, but make sure that we're aware of the platform. So we've created dip in and dip out gameplay. So we've got a completely open world. There's no instancing. Players can just jump in and join a group. There's not this hard leveling system like you'll get in World of Warcraft or Lord of the Rings Online or Guild Wars. So the players are easily able to jump in and jump out. Our average player plays for 15-minute sessions, but they'll do, our engaged players are doing 6 15-minute sessions a day plus. So 15-minute sessions is probably because our XP elixirs last for 15 minutes. But you know, we've got that style of gameplay. So players are able to sort of quickly jump in, do some content, meet up with friends. Because it's an open leveling system, you'll get players who are level 80 fighting alongside a player that's level 180. You'll get players who are level 200 who are going back to the beginning zones to help out with friends, that sort of stuff. So we try to keep everything as open as possible so that you don't have the sort of like, oh, okay, we're going to have to sit down and do a 45-minute raid. We do have some massive boss fights, but we've actually started putting a cap on those at 20 minutes. Tom?
20 minutes.
20 minutes. So previously, some of our boss fights could take a really long time. I think the first kill of our first raid boss took the players 2 hours. So we didn't want to pull up Final Fantasy 11 on that one.
Yeah. From the artistic side, how many artists do you employ, and how often do you employ different types of artists, from 2D, from different 3D?
I think the art team is 12 or 13 people at the moment. So what we've tried to do is kind of cover the disciplines. We've got sort of we've got 2 concept artists. We've got 3 people who do 3D. We've got 1 animator. We've got an art manager. So you know, we try and cover everything to one extent, and try and get people who can specialize, but also are happy to jump in and do some other things. We don't actually, we just hired a new animator at the moment, so we don't have one for the time being. But we've got people who are happy and able to jump in and do animations or do particles. So we try and cover that. We've kind of depends. We don't have any art openings at the moment, but we've had a lot in the past. We grew the team quite massively during the course of this project because we knew that we wanted to bring everything in-house. So the past, I think when I started, we had 1 artist. So 2 years ago we had 1 artist, maybe 1 artist, 1 concept, and then now we've got 13. So it kind of all depends on the project. So, getting the signal wrap up. Anyone have any last questions or? No? All right. Yeah. Thanks everyone.